What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Human in the Loop, the most actionable AI show on the internet. On this episode, we talk about AEO, or Answer Engine Optimization, with Kipp Bodnar, the CMO of HubSpot. We talk about why AEO is going to be as big as SEO, how HubSpot is seeing a 15x increase in web traffic from LLMs because of their AEO strategy, and how you can use the tools and frameworks that Kipp and his team have developed to see the same type of results. Let's hop into the conversation. Kipp Bodnar, CMO of HubSpot, thank you as always for just having interesting conversations with me. What can people expect if they watch until the end of this conversation?
Yeah, if you watch this conversation today, what we're going to do is we're going to give you some data about AEO. We're going to break down some of the best practices of AEO. We're going to show you a free tool that'll help give you some insights into how you're doing in AEO. We're actually going to walk through how Tenex and Alex are doing on AEO themselves. We'll show you some practical examples of like how to structure your content and do some basic things to get surfaced better in these new AI search engines. And hopefully that all means you're going to get discovered by more and more prospective customers.
And can you just quickly paint a picture of how big of a deal is AEO? Like, how seriously should people be taking this?
Yes, I got a little bit of data here. Let's pull that up. So I think what's interesting about AEO is both you need to understand traditional search first and foremost, right? It's both traditional search and what's happening. So ChatGPT at 800 million weekly active users, it's not Google, but it's on a growth path to become the size of Google search like in 36 months because it's growing at such a rapid rate. And so if you're just optimizing for Google search, you're leaving this other big opportunity. And then you also have AI overviews and Gemini. There's a whole host of things, people using Perplexity. It's a pretty big audience is the first thing I'd say. Because of AI overviews in Google, where they give you that AI generated answer at the top of your search pages, that means the percent of searches that have no clicks are going up. So even in Google, you're having like 58, 60% of your searches, nobody's clicking on a result there. And so you need to be part of those AI overviews. And so if a search engine result has that AI overview, the click-through rate for any link in that result is the aggregate is down 61%.
Yeah. So basically, every business wants to grow. Everyone on this chat works likely in a business and they want their business to grow.
Yep.
One of the ways you have your business grow is customers knowing about you and viewing you as an authority and all these things. And we live in a new paradigm where the old way of being discovered and people knowing who you are and what service you provide, that is shifting, and an increasing amount of that distribution is moving to this new world where AEO is kind of the gatekeeper of you having access to that distribution.
Yeah, it's that old world of you used to have to, a user had to hunt through that list of 10 links and click around and read stuff. And I remember searching and there was no good answer, years ago. And now it's like you have a bot that is giving you a custom bespoke answer for you. And the question is, are you going to be part of that answer? And there's some like benefits to being part of that answer. If you're in that AI overview in Google, you have a 35% higher click-through rate on your organic listing because people see that and they're like, great, I want to go and click and visit and take an action, right? You have to set up people to be ready to take an action with your information. The other thing that's interesting is that the quality of conversion rate of people who experience your product or click from an AI search, much, much higher. The data I've seen is 5x. At HubSpot, on some queries, we've seen up to 13x compared to Google search. That means, if you had a 1% conversion rate to customer on Google search, you'd have a 13% conversion rate on like ChatGPT. Much, much higher quality traffic. It makes sense. They're getting a lot more information. And so the people who are coming to you are much more qualified. They know what they're looking for and they're ready to take an action.
Love it. Okay. So that perfect setup. Obviously, the stakes are high here. There's real value in understanding this new practice, but also there's a lot of, I think, questions and skepticisms around, is AEO real? If it's real, how do I do it? What are the actual techniques? And I think you're going to dive into all that. So I want to let Chef Kipp Cook. So take the stage.
Well, let's talk a little bit about like the shift. And the first thing I would say is, I always get questioned is like, SEO dead, what's happening? And there's still a lot of people that use Google search, Alex, right? Everybody here probably, I sometimes use Google search for like very simple, quick transactional things. It's just really fast, right? And the important thing to understand here is that everything that you did for traditional search engine optimization is a foundation for what is a starting point for what you need to do with AEO. It's not like an either or. It's an evolution, not a revolution. Is the first thing that you need to understand, is that there's going to be this gradual evolution to AEO versus the traditional SEO. But traditional SEO is going to still be here for a little while. But I think it's important that we outline what the differences are, right? For years, we were all obsessed with how do we rank in the first 1, 2, 3 spots at Google. And now it's like, is AI, when somebody asks a question, are they citing my company or my product as a source or a solution in that answer? And that's like a very, very different thing, because there's a lot more nuance to it. It's like, are they talking about me positively? What's happening? How am I being mentioned? There's much more nuance than just, am I ranked in a certain position?
Totally. And just a question on citing, and maybe this is something you're going to talk about, is how do you increase? I guess there's two things you want to happen. You want to increase the odds of you being cited, and you want to increase the odds of you being cited properly. And I guess, are those effectively the two things that AEO leads to?
Well, so this is a great question. There are two big terms when it comes to AEO: mentions and citations. And mentions are, hey, they mention your company or your product in the response. Citations are, they mention and link to your product or service. So somebody has the ability to actually click and go back. And you obviously, so the things you care about on the mention side, how are they mentioning you? And are they mentioning you in the way that you want to be mentioned? And how are they mentioning you relative to the competition? For the actual citations, what links are they citing? Are those links prepared to handle somebody who is like very ready to go, very high intent? We did a lot of triage work in our AEO work of like, these people are so ready to take an action. We need to make sure that the top links are optimized for the right path for them. So there is a little bit of different work that happens between those two things. But the things you want to remember is mentions and citations are kind of two big things in the world of AEO.
Cool.
Yeah. The other thing here is like the content's very different. SEO was very ultra long form. AEO is much more chunked. And like natural language, I can give you guys a quick example. So this is a page on HubSpot that is about CRM and CRM integration and how you connect stuff to CRM. Very important part of our business, right? So the very first thing you see here is that the headers are in very much like AEO language. What is CRM integration? Like that is very much what somebody would ask a chatbot, or what's CRM integration? I use this CRM. What do I need to do? Like that's the type of thing that somebody would ask. So part of it's like the actual word choice and everything you're using. You also see there's chunking of information. There's table of contents, and they're all about things that would be related, that would be mentioned in certain prompts around CRM integration. What is it? What are the benefits of it? How do I add CRM integration tools? You can tell like these are very plain spoken, non-jargon, very organized ways of presenting the same information that you would have in the SEO world, but in a much more chunked and reliable way. You have these very clear section boxes and chunking of information to really basically be a mini answer box on the page itself, where you are, what is CRM integration? And you are telling the LLM in a very concise sentence what a CRM integration is.
Yep.
Right? Like this might seem in some ways like obvious, but most websites don't look like this and are not organized like this and are not using this type of straightforward language.
Totally. And two questions here. One is the layout that we're looking at now, because like you're an SEO expert also. How would this have been different in a pre-AEO world? Would this have been formatted in a noticeably different fashion to rank well in SEO, or is it quite similar?
So this is a great question. you think about what you were solving for. In the world of SEO, you were solving, do I have the right keywords on that page? And that would not be headers and questions. That would be, what's my keyword density? Am I using the right words? Do I have the right internal linking so that the Google bot is showing that I've got this cluster of pages about this topic? So instead of like, I have these 8 pages about this topic, they're all pointing back to this core canonical version of this page. Instead, we're saying, hey, this is many chunks of information. We've essentially created one page that has lots of different bytes that, depending on the prompt, the AI bot will pull different components out. So does that make sense, that instead of like the network of pages, we've consolidated it to one page with much more segmented and chunked up information?
Absolutely. Well, what it sounds like to me is actually there is a meaningful difference in how the information is organized. And it really is these chunks that very clearly answer a question. That question is a kind of logical query that someone would have in an LLM. I guess the next obvious question I would have as like a business owner is, let's say I'm getting a bunch of my traffic through SEO and search already. Does this new way of presenting information, like, should I be worried that basically, in order to take care of my future self, I'm going to hurt my current self?
It's a really good question. And I think there are edge cases where the answer to that might be maybe. But you're looking at, like, from what we've seen, it's more like 10-20% of like overlap. This page, for example, this didn't get a lot of search traffic. It got some search traffic. It's getting way more pickup in AEO. And part of that's because even the queries are different. Like, all of this information is about how to integrate and take action around a CRM, not like what a CRM does, how do you use one, all of the how-to type of stuff. So yes, occasionally, but I think you'll find that you kind of have your how-to long form that is still ranking well in traditional search in a lot of markets, but this is kind of an additive to it most of the time.
Cool.
Yeah. So as we go through this, you're going to continue to see, Alex, where we've got aligned visuals. We have visuals with a lot of text here to also, because AI bots can also take that text and those images and read. So it's both for the user and for the ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, what have you. And then you see there's very unique sections. These sections are all pretty short. In the SEO world, each one of these sections would have been like 1,000 words, and these are now a paragraph or two. And so it's much more broken up. You see that we've got video explanations so that if the AI bot decides that it needs to put a video example in, it can pull the video that we want into the page. And so this is just like a really good example of like a very detailed page that historically probably would have been 10 different pages in the SEO world that is now chunked up into one long page that gives people some insights. And more importantly, is built for robots just as much as humans.
Love it. Few follow-up questions, but good comment from Daniel Green, who said, I am so amped for cooking recipes to lose the novels and just be instructions again.
Yes.
I'm very excited for you, Daniel Green. Okay. First question is, I've heard in the world of AEO, like, companies not only having like their HTML and CSS on their site, but also having a markdown version of their page because it's easier for an LLM to read, or when like pre-training is done for models, markdown is what's used. Is that something people need to think about? Is that not a real thing? Do you guys think about this at HubSpot?
I think if you're super advanced, that's something you should consider. There are a few things. There's the markdown. There's also how you manage your CDN and determine where you're allowing the bot traffic to go on your site, where you're sending the bot traffic. Those are like those are optimization things versus like the obvious things. For most people, you're like a year away from caring about that, is my honest take. And in a year from now, it might not matter.
Yep, absolutely. Right? Selfish question for what we do at Tenex. So we're having this conversation now, and, I'm a big believer in squeeze all the juice out of the lemon from a content perspective. One of the things we do with this content is we turn every conversation, every workflow like this into a playbook on our site. It is an email gated playbook. the question is does that completely kill AEO because there's the email gate there? Is there any knowledge around that? Because obviously the value is we collect emails, but the downside would be we're just completely crushing any possibility of us showing up in an LLM.
So there's a couple things. It's largely like, are you letting the LLMs crawl that gated page? Like, you used to have this same issue with landing pages, and you would just have to decide, do you want like the thank you page, the page after the landing page, to get ranked or not? And that was a big decision for a lot of businesses. So it's just like, are you allowing those pages to basically be public pages, and just in that transactional moment they're gated, but if somebody searches they can find them? Or is it really locked down and only behind that gate does it exist? And if it's only behind that gate it exists, then yeah, you are losing out. Like, the bigger notion to me, like one of my big pet rocks on this that I want to really communicate, is all information is now available, whether you give it to people or not. And I think most people do not give enough information, do not have enough public information. Like, in this day and age, for every business to not have public pricing is laughable. Because I can use AI to do deep research on Reddit and all across the web and reverse engineer your pricing.
So you're just making people's jobs harder because they're going to find it out regardless. You're just taking steps in the process.
And not only are they going to find it out regardless, they might find it out in ways you don't want them. Like, they might go researching and find out, at the end of the quarter, they always discount 20%, so I'll just wait. Things like that. So you want to make sure that pricing, FAQs, as much information that lives like private within your company that's acceptable can also be available to the LLMs if you're really focused on getting distribution and awareness through these new channels.
Absolutely. Well, I know you have a bunch of slides to get through. I know you also have like the tool, so I'll let you keep cooking, and I'm going to look at the questions in the chat as you go through.
So let's see here. If I think we've had this slide up. We've talked a lot about a few things here, so I'm gonna keep us moving. And if people have questions, this was like, I think, a question we actually had, and I wanted to also address.
Yeah, and I've heard this question so many times. Yeah.
And the answer is, it's not a rebrand of SEO. We also had this like AEO even real, very real. I can tell you at HubSpot, we have grown our traffic and customers from AEO like 15x in the last year. Like, it's very real, and it's definitely a material part of our business now. And the reality is, why people think this is because there is a big overlap, because some of the stuff you do for one also impacts the other. And we've talked about that in the first few minutes. But it's like, these are the things we've already gone over. I just showed you what content chunking was. I've showed you what the answer first architecture is, what is CRM integration, and that 60-word response right after it, answer first architecture. Oh, excuse me here. The other part of this is like, do your definitions match what other people are saying across the web? One of the other things about the AEO bots is that they're trying to find patterns, and they're looking to say, this company says this thing. Do the other companies, or do the analysts, or do these other people also say this thing the same way? Because if there's alignment, then there's a higher likelihood it's going to be credible. And these are kind of the different things that really weren't part of SEO. Like, all of these were not SEO tactics, but they now exist in this new AI world. And the other big thing, maybe the biggest thing, Alex, is there's lots of platforms. It's not just a Google game.
Yep.
Yes, Google Gemini and Google Search is part of it, but Claude, Perplexity, and ChatGPT also all matter in the early stages of this game.
And a few questions here. Should you assume that best practices for AEO are roughly the same across all these platforms? Because I guess I would assume you think of this as like a hugely beneficial thing, which is one platform doesn't own all of your traffic. And so there's just hedged risk there. But then there's obviously the question around, do the AEO bots and these LLMs all work in a similar enough manner that you can be thinking about them all the same? How do you think about that?
Yes, and the yes and there is, each of these platforms have some nuances. And to give you like a very specific example of that, OpenAI has a partnership with Reddit where it pays for a fire hose of all the Reddit data, right? And so Reddit is a big part of answers in ChatGPT. And so if you are not, where it's less of a part of answers in something like Claude, but if you are not participating in Reddit, you do not have a presence on Reddit, then that is going to impact how you show up in ChatGPT. Right. So that there are some similarities like this, like the architecture, the on-page stuff that we were just talking about. That's similar across all of them. It's the off-page stuff. It's the influences that is a little bit different depending on the individual LLM.
And then the final one on this slide is, I see the fourth bullet is entity first thinking. It says being recognized in AI's knowledge graph is greater than or keywords. Is that what you've already stated, or is there a separate idea here?
The idea here is that AI needs to understand, in our case at HubSpot, what HubSpot does. And we have to be consistent. Like before, we could just list out a million keywords, right? And rank for those keywords. Somebody would find them, and then we could eventually maybe tell them about HubSpot, right? Now, if somebody is asking a bot for anything related to what we do, AI has a memory, it has context of what HubSpot is as a company and what we do. And we have to make sure that we are telling it who we are, the products we offer completely, so it has the right picture of us, which is very different from search engine, which was very fragmented, very diverse.
Awesome. Cool. This is great.
Cool. Here is what I think is the most interesting stat in the entire deck, Alex, which is almost 60% of AI citations do not come from the top 20 Google results. And so let me unpack this. Let me explain this. That means if I'm looking for in ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, etc., I put a prompt in and it gives me a result for my question. The links within that result, 60% of those links aren't in traditional Google search, the top 20 links.
Yeah, that's wild.
Isn't that wild? So it's kind of it shows you that there's a very different mode happening here and that there's a new greenfield opportunity for so many businesses.
Yeah. I mean, what that tells me is, even though to your point that SEO and AEO smell similar, and you said before, like there's this foundation of SEO that you can build on top of for AEO.
Yep.
Obviously they're not that similar. Or else you wouldn't be getting that 60% of the results you're getting with an LLM are not showing up basically in the first 2 pages of Google.
Correct. Well, because remember, traditional Google search is to give you an answer, and AI is to help you take an action. And AI is also much more like an ultra long tail. The average prompt search on one of the LLMs is like 40 to 60 words. Where like in Google, it's like 4 to 6 words. It's like it's a much different level of complexity that's happening in these LLMs. And if you just look at that, then that explains that there has to be some level of difference, right?
Yeah, it's such a crazy thing to think about also, because I know people who are in the SEO world, they use these different applications and software providers to basically look at keywords, look at long tail keywords, and targeting long tail keywords, but valuable long tail keywords was always like a really important thing for SEO focused companies. I'm just like racking my brain. Is that even possible to do that in an AEO world? And will similar type of technologies even be possible when the average query is 40 to 60 characters? Like this long tail is probably literally 100,000x times that. So how do you even how as an AEO practitioner can you be more scientific about this like SEO, or is it just not possible?
It's like an ultra long tail strategy, right? Which is kind of what you're going. Let me give you an example. We had our event at HubSpot in September, our big conference Inbound, and I was talking with customers. We have a customer, Wilderness RV, and they're the largest RV rental company in New Zealand. People fly to New Zealand, they rent an RV, they drive all around and explore amazing things to see in New Zealand, right? And SEO is a huge part of their strategy. And we were talking about their AEO strategy. And if you think about it in these very practical terms, I think you and I would both agree that the previous SEO strategy for businesses like that, it would be like, the 10 things that you must see on a road trip in New Zealand, right? Oh, the 5 best places to see this type of bird, that kind of stuff, right? Like that's what would happen. Now it's very different because the type of question would be, hey, I'm Alex. I live in New Jersey. I have a wife and I have a daughter. She's this old. She's really in love with these animals. When you would describe it all,
way more context.
Yeah. And you would have the LLM would basically build you a custom itinerary of like what you should do and how you should see those things. And, here you're going to want to rent an RV. So now it's like, wow, that's a whole different ballgame for this company. And they have to actually have the right chunkable, organized content that helps the LLM understand, you can take my RV to all these places. There's not a mileage restriction. It's a very different set of information when you start thinking about it in that kind of like ultra long tail way.
Totally. It also just makes me wonder if there are going to be people or are already people that basically try to game this ultra long tail by creating hundreds of thousands of derivative website pages that just provide slightly different chunks of like slightly different queries about basically the same type of question.
I think what's actually going to happen, my prediction is that this is going to be one of the monetizations of vibe coding, is that you are going to have people spin up like instances of Replit and Claude Code to just build one-time use apps for these. I know there are these 1,000 types of queries on this thing that I could build a mobile app for. I'm going to build 1,000 different mobile apps and try to sell 400 of those 1,000 to these people.
That's so interesting. So you're basically saying it'll go the opposite way, which is like you're not going to create 1,000x the content. You're going to create 1,000x the product that maps to the content query.
That's my thesis. I may or may not be wrong, but either way, it's going to be fascinating to see. So what I hope we're walking away from for this part of the conversation, though, is that there's a big opportunity. And the other thing I would say, Alex, on the difference, if you think about traditional search engine optimization, really, really powerful, was not a fast process. Right? Like, I created a website, I created a blog, I added all these pages, I built these links, and a couple months later, Google's crawling me a little bit more, and then my traffic's starting, but it's like a 6, 9, 12-month process, right? AO is much faster. You can be included same day, next day. I host a podcast called Marketing Against the Grain. We've done videos on like timely things and literally gotten traffic from ChatGPT within hours.
Crazy.
And that wouldn't have happened in the old school day of Google search. So there is a different timeline from the AO world versus the SEO world. And I think that's important to consider.
Before we move on to the next portion, we got a question from Maria who said, so is it a better idea to duplicate our website pages with AEO or just do AEO on our current pages? If we do it on our current pages, would it kill our SEO efforts? How do you guys approach this at HubSpot?
I think my advice on this is we look for net new opportunities. Like what we solve for the user experience, right? We are looking at prompts, and we're basically like, what are people writing in related to our products and services in these LLMs? What is the LLM saying? And what are the gaps that we have and how we need to show up? And what is the information we need to fill those gaps? And do we have an existing page that we might need to make an edit to? And if so, we haven't found a huge trade-off between SEO and AEO and making those edits. But often or not, it is like we need to make a new page.
Yep. Absolutely.
And so it's going to be a little bit of both would be my answer.
And then one other question from Tom Babb, who runs marketing at Gauntlet AI, is he said, does domain authority matter?
Not right now in AEO. Again, entity understanding matters. And on a given topic, right, the AI bot is going to look at the conversations and information across the internet on that topic. And it's going to look and see how authoritative do we think this is on the top, this product is on the topic. Like, hey, it's got really good reviews. Yeah. People are talking about it on Reddit, blah, blah, blah. All right. Now it's going to likely be a bigger part of the answer versus like the traditional like PageRank domain authority.
It's interesting. It almost in a totally separate context, but reminds me of like what's happening on social platforms now in the era of going from social graphs to interest graph, where your long-standing reputation actually matters less. And what matters most is like, you're only as good as your last piece of content performed. It almost feels like
it is similar. I think I hadn't thought of it that way, but I think you're right.
Yeah, like you're in AEO, you're only as good as the quality of the chunk that you provided to the query that the person asked.
Yeah, and if somebody comes along and does something better and has a bigger and bolder presence across the web, then they'll be what's next.
Interesting. Cool. Okay, let's keep it going. This is great.
Let's keep it going. Okay, so I thought that was like super interesting. Now, Alex, we've got a tool at HubSpot called AEO Grader. It's free. I'm going to show it to you. We did Tenex. Did your company.
Let's go.
And we're going to go through. But before we get into it, it really looks at like 5 things. It looks at how is your brand recognized on these AEO search platforms? What's your score? How often are you mentioned versus your competitor in the market? What is like the quality of your presence? So how rich and reliable is your content to the AI search engines? What's the sentiment of your brand? Are you talked about positively on these search engines? And then what's your share of voice? Like how much does AI mention you versus your competitors?
Okay. Sounds great. I'm incredibly scared for what it's going to pop out, but opportunity. We call it opportunity.
Don't be scared. So this is AEO Grader. What I did is I put in Tenex, United States, AI and technology, and then I went ahead and created your report. So here's your report. Okay. So you see Tenex Labs here, and you see we have 3 columns, and these columns are going to persist: OpenAI, Perplexity, and Gemini through the length of the page of how you are showing up on each of these. So you're doing best in Perplexity. You're doing pretty good in ChatGPT, and you're the least strong in Google Gemini. Okay. In terms of like the overall score. And what's interesting is that your brand recognition is pretty low, but you're a new company, so that's not surprising, is it? I don't.
That's not surprising.
Not surprising at all. You've got a very good market score, 6 out of 10 for being a new company, which means you're clearly out there doing things in the market. What's really good is people love you're talked about very positively.
Let's go,
which is awesome. What I find fascinating is like, if you look at the quality of your presence, how AI is looking at your content, Perplexity loves it. It's going, you're going pretty good.
Like that's very strange to me. Like, why would there be such a difference?
Well, I think it is the sources that they're looking at, right? Mm-hmm. And the depth, the type of quality. You know, like I don't know, are you doing a ton of stuff on Reddit?
No.
Yeah, and that's a big input to OpenAI, right? And that's probably part of this score. It's not all of it, but it's a factor in that, right?
For sure.
And so the other thing we found out, and this is like a really interesting point, you know what you probably also don't do is like affiliate marketing, right?
Yeah, we don't do any.
Yeah, you're not advertising on those ranking sites and software advice recommending sites and that kind of stuff. The LLMs look at that stuff, man. And there's a weird correlation between like paid placements and rankings that there's real arbitrage around. I will just say, like, there's some science there to it, obviously, but because you are so social as a brand, that's why I'm saying I'm not surprised by some of the presence. It's because those social channels are kind of walled gardens and less accessible to the LLMs, right? Twitter's locked it down. Grok only has access to Twitter data, like that kind of thing. Where the web and web content, especially like content on your own site, content on affiliate sites, Reddit in the case of OpenAI,
which we're doing very little of, and the content we're doing on 10X's site right now, again, are all of these gated playbooks. So in my mind, like, one of the first things that we should be doing is like, I think these are hard gates that no matter how you land on the playbook, you have to put in your email. We have to have a smarter way around like gate it in a way that we're still collecting emails, but also like the LLMs need to be able to see the text that's in these playbooks.
Correct. Exactly right. And so now that we've talked about it for a minute, I'm actually not too surprised about the presence score, right? Because you're doing so much in LinkedIn and X, which are pretty walled garden social networks, and a lot of the content on your site is locked down.
That's That's super helpful. And just as I look at this, so what share of voice again you mentioned is like how you're mentioned
relative to like other company. It's like what percent of the time are you mentioned versus other competitors or similar companies?
Yep. That's super helpful. The other thing I'm thinking about, and I have to talk to producer Brad about this, is we have our newsletter that we send out weekly called ultrathink.
Yep.
And I'm trying to think about like where that's hosted right now. And also if that's hosted on the Tenex domain or if that's hosted on like our newsletter platforms, like site also. So that's another thing I need to look into as well.
And how you repurpose that newsletter content into accessible content on your site, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. It also makes me think about like the bottom section of our newsletter. Usually it's like a WTF is and some AI term. I'm also thinking about like, but it's a very chunkable piece of content. It's like, it is literally the header of that section is always like a question about a certain term in AI and then our answer to it. I'm thinking about like, that's a really good chunk that we can kind of think about how are we more methodical about it to show up in.
Well, but you could also turn that into like a modern day FAQ. You could just have it like 10x.com/WTF, right? And it's just WTF everything in AI. And it's like this chunked FAQ site where people can click through and look at everything. You could build that pretty programmatically and with the same format. And I imagine it would have a material difference in how you're
I love that. That's a great idea. Cool. Okay, this was super helpful. And my promise to you is give me a quarter. We'll have a conversation again. You're going to run the report again and it'll look a lot different.
I'm here for that deal. I needed to enter my email so that you could get the full report. Come back, give me the full. I did this already. Come on, HubSpot.
They're like, Kipp, use your company.
I forgot to submit it. That was a user error. My bad. Okay. So we went through this stuff, and here you go. You can now kind of get into even deeper dives once you do the full report, right? Because so this is telling you what your market position in classifies you as a leader, challenger, or niche player. So right now you're niche. Not surprised. You're a startup.
Yep.
You're innovator. That's definitely the right brand archetype for you, right? I think the app's very good.
All this makes sense.
The source quality. So rates the credibility of the sources that mention your brand. Premium sources boost your authority. So that's one of the things that's hurting you on OpenAI, right? And it's a lot of it's probably Reddit, candidly.
Yep.
Right. And that's the difference of perception there.
And just a question on the Reddit thing, because you've now mentioned it a few times, enough where like I want to think about it.
Please.
This could be a whole nother session, so we don't need to get into this.
Definitely could be.
But when you say kind of how you're talked about on Reddit, is it like, do you have people or someone at HubSpot that literally is just in certain subreddits adding value to posts in replies and natively mentioning HubSpot or different tools?
Yes, and we have our own HubSpot subreddit.
Got it. Okay.
That we manage and encourage people, customers, and everything to share and participate in.
Awesome. Okay, that's super helpful. Yeah. And then what is data richness?
Data richness, I'm going to give you evaluates the variety and completeness of available information about your brand across digital channels. So this again is the symptom of like a lot of what you're doing is on Twitter and LinkedIn. And it's locked down.
That's the big issue. It's like 90% of our footprint on the internet is on these platforms.
Yeah, you're doing this social first, which is great, but it is a disadvantage you get a little bit on the AEO side of things.
Cool. Okay.
Cool. I think this is really cool. I mean, it tells you what it thinks your competition is in terms of like the answers you're competing against. OpenAI, Google AI, Watson. But also, like, I don't know, I haven't heard a bunch of these.
I haven't heard of 80% of these companies.
Yeah, so it's like it's a cool area to dive into, but it gives you kind of rough mentions and rough comparison mentions, which I think is helpful. And when people are comparing you, what are they comparing you on? Pricing, support services, reliability, and again, some of this stuff is right. Some of it is like it's AI. So you're going to have to go through and take a look yourself. But it gives you like a really nice detailed summary of like your strengths and your perceived strengths. Remember we were talking about the entity of like, how do they see this company? How do they see what you're doing at Tenex? This is kind of a summary of how they see Tenex right now. And you can decide how you want to change that by giving them new information.
This is also really interesting. So go up for a second.
Yeah.
Right here. So, and this is something for us to think about. So in that middle one on Perplexity, what's happening is there are two 10Xs. There's a 10X AI that's a venture-backed cybersecurity business. And then there's our business, 10X AI transformation firm. And it's basically bundling it into two complementary offerings per Perplexity. So that's like, even how do we make sure that there's separation of businesses that have the same name for in terms of these
you might even have to have like a page just for the bots that explains that, right?
Yeah. That's really interesting. One other thing I'll just mention, I think your point around like most of our footprint being on social, which just doesn't help us from an AEO perspective, is spot on. The only place where it is helpful, and you guys just don't track this in the tracker yet, is Grok.
Oh,
so
yeah.
We actually get a lot of traffic from Grok right now.
I bet you do.
Yeah.
I bet it's shocking, actually.
It's a lot.
And it's just tied to how you show up on X.
Exactly.
That's what I wonder is how much of that is people hitting Grok in posts versus like just prompting natively.
Yeah. So I've asked two people about this. I was speaking to an executive at a multi-billion-dollar entertainment and talent agency.
Yeah.
And he basically just said he thinks like their company is really behind the eight ball with AI. And he just looked up in Grok. He's like, who are kind of the most well-respected AI transformation firms helping enterprises with their transformation? He was like, there were 4 companies that came up and you were one of the 4. And so then I DM'd you on Twitter and we got on a call.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is a really good call out and not one that I have thought about. Now I want to do some different stuff on Twitter /X to get more from Grok, which is pretty cool. Yeah. So it outlines growth areas. Like it's pretty deep in terms of how these different engines see you. But again, what I love about this, especially around sentiment, is you're killing it. And you're actually showing up really well. It's just how do we actually get you to show up more is kind of the next big step. But
absolutely.
Again, this is free. Everybody should do it. I think it's the right first step. I think the obvious kind of next step, Alex, on this would be cool. Now that I understand the problem, like what the hell do I do? And part of it is the content strategy that we've talked about already today. But part of it is like if you're really serious, there's probably like you probably are going to go look for an AEO tool to help you solve this. We've got one coming out at HubSpot. We bought an awesome company called XFunnel. That'll be out soon. There's Limey.ai, which is really good that I like a lot. A lot of good tools out there, depending on your business. Go do your own AEO research on them.
Yep.
But what you essentially do is you buy software that is going to let you actually insert the prompts and track the prompts and understand on a more granular basis how you're showing up and are the actions you're taking actually impacting how you're showing up.
When you say putting in the prompts, basically you just put in prompts that you would want to show up in and it's showing the results.
Yeah, most of these tools, you put your own prompts in, it's going to give you recommended prompts. It's going to go and basically see what the prompts are based on your company and your product and services. So it's going to give you like between those 3 vectors, it's going to give you a pool of prompts that you're basically going to track. And it's what these tools are also going to do is they're going to help you have a detail into like the share of voice, the amount of citations, like the macro numbers that you need to move to actually know that you're going to get more business from these channels.
I'm curious, and you don't have to share exact numbers, but like from a significance perspective, if you project like today, but then also project out, say 5 years, how big of a source of traffic for HubSpot do you think AEO is going to get to?
Okay. So there's a couple of things here. You said a very interesting word, source of traffic. I would probably switch it to source of customers. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is because these LLMs do want to keep people within the LLM, right? And so, yes, they're going to cite and they're going to send some people to you, but they're giving a ton of the information there. And one of the things, it's much harder to track than regular search engines, right? Because you're not getting the blue link and to the UTM to track everything from Google. It might be like, cool, I'm in ChatGPT, I see this thing, and then I just type in tenexlabs.ai because that's all I need. That's all I need to do, right? And so it's much harder to attribute. And part of the other thing is we know that the conversion rate from visit to customer is much higher. So I think you want to look at like materiality of customers. If I guess I would look at is it's 10x in the last year in terms of like visits and customers from decimal points of percent to like approaching materiality now.
Yeah.
And I would suspect it's going to, again, the projections are that even if ChatGPT keeps growing the way it is, it's going to be the size of Google search in a few years. So I would assume that it's going to be at worst case scenario, like 20%.
Crazy. That's wild.
Which is wild, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's insane. And I didn't even think about, which it is a whole nother thing, which is like every marketer has always just like, they feel a shiver run down their spine when they hear the word attribution. And now it's just going to be another huge headache because of, to your point, the trackability of people coming from LLMs is just so much harder.
Well, look at the words I'm using. I'm using sentiment, share of voice. These are traditionally very much brand marketing, brand survey type of metrics that you're now applying to search. And you're applying that to search because the tracking is so hard.
Yep.
You want to another fun, wild thing, Alex, that you may or may not expect. You also need to make a really amazing 404 page. Why do you need to make an amazing 404 page, error page for your website? Because the LLMs hallucinate links. So sometimes they will cite links that don't exist.
Yep.
There was 1 month where we had like 300,000 404s from LLMs. Just hallucinating links.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Isn't that wild? I feel like there's such interesting ways you could gamify that.
It is.
What if your 404 basically just becomes like something like, my guess is, one of the usual suspects sent you here, and then you actually have like a mini LLM built. Like,
well, that's exactly what I want to do, which is like look at the link that it got hallucinated and generate a page off of that link.
Exactly.
And just have a waiting message that says like, I'm generating your page for you right now. It'll be ready in 20 seconds. And
I love that.
Do it in real time would be awesome.
I love that. Well, I know we have 9 minutes left. Is there anything else you want to cover before we go to other questions?
Let's go to questions. I've covered the bulk of what I wanted to cover. I walked you through the tool. I've given you a lot of the like behind the scenes of like measurement, sentiment, the growth curve, and everything there. So let's go to questions.
Cool. Okay. So everyone who's watching, hopefully you've gotten a lot of value from this conversation already. Drop any questions you have here, and we're going to just try to hammer through as many as we can in the next 9 minutes. While we're waiting for those questions, one question that someone had shared was around who should be responsible for AEO. So obviously in a smaller company, right? The smallest company, it's going to be the founder.
Sure.
Slightly bigger company, it's going to be the first marketing hire. But as you get bigger and bigger, right? Historically, you've had like SEOs, like true SEO experts. Will that similar thing exist for AEO? And should it just be the SEO who kind of owns AEO?
Right now, it's for us and a lot of companies, it seems to be like a shared team. And part of, I think, the reason it needs to be that shared team is what we were talking about earlier, Alex, where there is some overlap. And because there's some overlap, there is some trade-off conversation, right? Like if you're talking about making a change to your most visited search page, you're like, do I really want to do that? Like, yes, I get some more traffic from ChatGPT, but how much? Like there's like a real thought process that has to happen there.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, what other questions do we have from the group? If you allow a model to train on your prompts and input content about your company, can that increase exposure on that model?
I mean,
I don't know. Yeah.
Most of these models now are doing web search in real time. And so I think what Marlon, you're asking is like, if you let all of your data be in the training set for that model, is that going to help how you show up? I think that there was a point in which that was true, but I think that they're now, have crawlers and are running search queries in real time. So I think that is less of an issue now.
So Bill said, Kip, if the niche is defined as AI and technology, how is the greater searching to determine a more limited share to compare Tenex versus other companies? Or is it just versus all of those companies with those two tags? I think it's basically saying, like, if you define the niche that you're in multiple ways, how does it know what the competitor set is?
Well, it's using natural language, right? And so you can type whatever your industry and niche is, in this case, AI and technology, and it's doing two things. It's looking at who plays in those markets, but again, it's looking at that entity knowledge. It went and looked at what 10x does to determine the types of queries, AI transformation types of queries, and who else is showing up for those queries.
Love it. We have a question from Kimmy. Do reviews help your positioning or likelihood of getting mentioned in AI search more than traditional search?
I don't know if it's more, but because they matter in both, but yes, it matters. This is what I'm talking about. Review sites, ranking sites, awards sites, affiliate sites, those do matter, we have found. And there is real input depending on the topic of how they help you show up.
From Hugo, you discussed the metric shift where SEO gave visibility into ranking signals. With AEO, we're optimizing for black box reasoning inside models we don't control. How should CMOs think about the risk of building entire go-to-market strategies on inference patterns that they don't see or validate? Do we expect providers to start opening up this visibility or consulting to CMOs? So basically, I think the question is like, there's way less data on this because an LLM is a black box. Is it a really risky strategy for marketers to kind of bet on?
Isn't the Instagram algorithm a black box?
Yep.
I understand the question. I just don't believe there's risk in that there's a lot of closed network, YouTube, Instagram, et cetera, that we are building on. And I think it comes down to incentives. Like, are you aligned with the platform's incentives? Like on YouTube, if you're making good videos that people want to watch, like you're pretty well aligned. The other thing that happened with traditional search is traditional search data, Google Analytics, Webmaster Tools, that happened because of AdWords. Advertising and the data, you start surfacing advertising data, and the advertising data can also be used on the organic side. We know ChatGPT is testing ads and is going to roll out ads. So I think the first big milestone to understand if your question is a real concern or not is going to be over the next 6 months of what information we get from ChatGPT and what information we don't.
Are you first in line at the door to buy ads?
First in line. Sign me up. Take my money.
Why?
It's just the history of marketing. The history of marketing is there's a great first mover advantage. And when you're early in cycles, the rules have not been written, the value has not been extracted. And because of that, you have a chance to have a better result. You can still execute poorly and have that not happen, but we should be able to make it work.
Love it. Kipp, this was awesome. Thank you as always for the conversation, my friend. Excited to have you back on in the future when our score on your grader.
I'm excited to see all the work you do. This was awesome. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us. It was great to be here.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it, everyone.
Thanks,
see you guys next week.